Certainly in the award of gallantry medals, the Sikhs were certainly overrepresented, not only in Victoria Crosses, but in other gallantry medals as well.
But any Sikh soldiers who'd hoped that their loyalty during the war would be rewarded with greater autonomy back in their homeland were in for a shock. Within months of the war's end, Britain reverted Punjab back to martial law under a repressive regime which reached its nadir in April 1919 in the Sikhs' holiest city. British military orders led to the shooting of 1,500 unarmed men, women and children at Jallianwala Bagh for taking part in a peaceful demonstration against British rule in what became known as the Amritsar Massacre.
They'd fought as a voluntary force for another country, for a campaign which didn't affect them, and this is how they were treated. So there was betrayal, and they felt cheated.
By the start of the Second World War, Anglo-Indian relations were increasingly fraught due to the rapidly growing independence movement, leaving many Indians facing a dilemma of loyalty. Nevertheless, India's Sikhs, Hindus and Muslims again answered the British distress call, with over 2.5 million signing up for action, the largest volunteer army in history.
India is in arms, training troops as fast as they can be trained. Latest reports show that 80,000 men a month are joining the Indian Army.
The Sikh contribution to the Second World War was exceedingly important. They probably formed about a quarter of the combat units of the Indian Army. So that they were in tanks, there were infantry, there was Sikh artillery, so huge contribution.
And behind the lines of troops, and forming a solid bond with them, a teeming population of workers, young and old, are making the weapons of war for their countrymen to wield.
It's very key for the Allies, particularly in the West, to have the numbers that they need to hold back the German advance in North Africa and to push up Italy towards the heartland of Europe. So the contribution that Sikh soldiers make and the contribution that Sikh airmen make during the Battle of Britain in particular, where every single pilot counts, is a very key contribution.
In the summer of 1940, the German Luftwaffe's bombs pummeled Britain's towns and cities in a bid to hammer Britain into submission.
Millions of firebombs rained down on the great city of London. In a matter of minutes, more than 1,500 different sections of the city burst into roaring flames. Flames that swiftly merged into the greatest fire in recorded history.
Britain sent out a plea for foreign pilots to help defend the country from the threat of Nazi invasion, and Indian fighter pilots were among those who flew to the rescue. One of the first to sign up was a young Sikh, moved by the plight of the British people.
I took part in the operations against the Germans in Europe. London was being bombed day and night. It was almost every day a scene of fire. So then I felt that I was fighting for the right cause. England was alone in 1940, and we had hardly any defense. So that was the time when I started feeling that we have to sort of fight for survival. And that was the reason that I continued to fight for the next 4 or 5 years. Whenever I travelled to Uxbridge from London Central, we had to take the underground Piccadilly line. And I would find the platforms full of people. There was hardly any space even for us to get into the train and come out. Their plight was really pitiable at that stage. So we have to fight to win the peace.
Pujji soon found that the combination of a turban and RAF wings made him a popular figure in wartime London.
People people here had never seen an Air Force officer with a turban. And wherever I went, they felt very sort of obliged. They said, "Oh, you're fighting for us." I stood in a queue trying to see the Gone with the Wind film. That was a long queue. I stood at the back, and as soon as the man in front of me looked at me, he says, "Sir, you don't have to queue." I mean, no. And when I went to the ticket counter, the girl there, she said, "You don't have to buy a ticket, sir. You can go in." I wrote to my father, I says, no one could better place to die than a place here. See, because these are the people who love me and respect me.
That affection was reciprocated as Pujji spent the next 5 years flying dangerous fighter sweeps that saw him cheat death on several occasions.
In one of my encounters with the German ME, I suddenly saw my dashboard smashed. See, what obviously had happened, aircraft behind me had fired without my knowing it. Black smoke from the engine started coming. Oil started coming out. I couldn't do anything except to try and return home. At about 8,000 feet, I thought I wouldn't make it. And then I saw the white cliffs of Dover. So I was so happy about it and continued to glide, and I just crashed onto the ground. I was dragged out of the aircraft, people saying, "Oh, he's still alive, he's still alive." I could hear them, but I had my eyes closed because of the fire.
Despite suffering serious head injuries, Pujji was back in the pilot's seat and protecting Britain from Nazi attack just weeks after the crash.
The Battle of Britain was won, but not by Hitler.
Pujji survived being shot down 3 more times, and by the end of the war he'd risen to squadron leader and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross Medal for his heroics in the air.
Without the Indian Army, Italy would have been very difficult. Without the Indian Army, the Burma campaign could not have been fought, or if it had fought, we would have lost. No Indian Army, no Far East campaign.
We wanted to fight against Hitler also and against Japanese also, and because we heard stories at that time in schools also. Our teachers was telling us that these Japanese are like this, Germans are barbaric, yes, and so we were actually against them because we wanted democracy or human rights.
For many of the Sikh soldiers, it was their faith that helped sustain them through difficulties on the battlefield.
In the morning, we used to pray, always. Everybody went from the tents or outside also, anywhere when we were in the army. We were praying for that, so we should win this war and God save us.